Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of a triathlon where two guys talk about the sport that they love, talking triathlon. My name is Tim Ford, and I'm joined by none other than James Bale himself, the sexiest voice in triathlon. Nate, how you going?
Yeah, pretty well, man. It's two slightly tired versions of us, isn't it? Because it's stupid early in the morning for you and stupid late in the evening for me because the time zones have done us again. But yeah, not too bad. Not too bad. Very busy at the moment.
The stupid
Busier
thing,
than I've been for a long time, which I'm enjoying.
it's good to be busy. The stupid thing for me is that I'm 4 hours behind Sydney. So even though it's early, it should be relatively late for me. But Christ almighty, it was rough to get up for this one. I did a really long, hot bike ride, 127 kilometers, I think. It's honestly it's such a beautiful ride. You go up this loop around the James Bond Islands. It's called Phang Nga. Uh, Probably one of my favorite rides in the world. But yeah, you got back here, so I was like, I'm a bit shattered. And then slipping straight back into the work stuff. But no, it's good to be back in Phuket. My triathlon home away from home, my favorite place on the planet to train. Been here for a few days, but it is so goddamn hot, man. Like you forget how hot it is. And I think
Mm.
I did a set of 800 runs the other day, and the first few, like I'm a superhero. Like God, I'm good. This is the best. And then about four of the 10 800s in, it's like it's getting a bit warm. Like, I'm actually not quite comfortable. By the end, I was almost walking. I think the last 800 I had to stop like three times, question my life choices, and like, limp home. But it's always fun. It's a good place to train, and I love it. So good to be here.
I'm jealous, mate. It is just shitting it down all the time here right now. Every day. Every day. Dark. It's dark at 5 o'clock in the evening. It ain't fun right now.
Grim, mate. Grim, grim, grim,
Yeah.
grim. But look, well, sorry, this is Talking Triathlon. If you guys like the podcast, you want to support the show, head to patreon.com/talking triathlon. You get access to our WhatsApp group, Facebook group, and the bonus monthly episode that we record. We've done three of them now. The last one was on about Kona. We talk a bit more about the Sam Laidlow doping investigation and Malibu Super League, me being there. We'll do another one probably in a few weeks, actually. But it's good fun. Good to see. We've cracked over the 40 something mark, I think, with the patrons now, which is cool. So thank you, everybody who's signed up and supported us. It's great. And anyway, all that stuff, patreon.com/talking triathlon. Jimbo, you've had a guest join you this week. I think a few people have probably heard of her. Um, I was actually flabbergasted that you got it when you said I'm interviewing Taylor Knibb. I was like, fucking hell, well done, James Bale. That's very good, mate.
Oh, there you go. We go back to the 2021 Collins Cup, me and Taylor, mate. So she was keen to come on and have a chat.
I mean, I'm not surprised. You are the sexiest voice in triathlon. Like when you speak, people listen. So,
People listen.
well, look, should we drop the interview and then we'll come back and have a bit of a chat about Taylor afterwards? How's that sound?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. Yeah, so this week I'm being joined by PTO ranked number 3 and current Ironman 70.3 world champion and current PTO US Open champion, Taylor Knibb. Taylor, what a couple of years you've had. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on this podcast.
Oh, no worries. It's always a pleasure. We're really, really happy to welcome you along for a chat. So we've just had a quick catch up pre-recording, but for the sake of the listeners, where are you at the moment? Where can people find you?
Well, that sounds like stalkerish, but I'm in
It
Boulder,
does.
Colorado. I won't give my exact location. It's a
No,
big
no.
city.
We don't want
I'm
your
at,
exact location. So you're in Boulder, Colorado, and bit of an off season right now.
yes, a bit of I guess my first 2024 official day of training was Monday, but it's still very much easing in and respecting the distance that I did a few weeks ago in Kona. So
Yeah, totally. How long sort of did you take some time completely off after that, or was it sort of just easing around and keeping moving? What was your post Kona approach?
Well, so I don't think it was a typical post Kona approach. I took 7 days of absolutely nothing because I went straight from Kona. I didn't go straight. I spent 25 minutes at home to switch out my luggage, and then I went to Lidl Trek camp, and so I got to meet the whole cycling team and everything. So that was another few days of a lot of just and stuff, we'll say. But it was very fun to go to Trek headquarters, and we also got to go to SRAM headquarters. So
Mm-hmm.
it was a very fun trip, and I was grateful to do it, and it was perfect timing. And then I've just been training easy since then.
Nice, nice. So let's talk about the year. How has your season been from your perspective?
Oh, my season's it's a bit of a mixed bag, I think. I mean, probably, so a year is 52 weeks, probably 45 weeks ago, I had to send an email to all of the partners that I work with that I was getting surgery, and I got surgery and it went well, but I felt like I was kind of playing catch up the whole year in a lot of ways. And I felt like I was missing that base for a lot of the year. And then like I had a very good August. I cannot complain about August. September, I kind of paid for that August, and then I got to do Kona, so I can't complain. But
No. So when you had the surgery, how long a recovery did that come with?
well, so it was 4 weeks of nothing after surgery, but I had some time off before surgery because I just had to figure out the diagnosis and what I was going to do. And then it was 12 weeks of no running. So I think my first day back running was March 29th. And that was on an Ultra G after about 4 months off of running. And I raced in Yokohama 6 weeks later. So I cannot complain.
And it's been a mixed season, hasn't it? Because you've been racing the short course, plus you've had a victory in Ironman 70.3 Boulder, you had a victory at the US PTO Open, and then you had a victory at the Ironman 70.3 World Championships, and you had a fourth place at Kona. What was it like balancing those two distances? Do you even think about it as a balance, or is it just you're a triathlete and you race all distances?
Well, I think when you put it that way, it's kind of all my wins were at the middle distance. I didn't win a short course race. And so it's kind of, I can't say I was purely focused on the short course racing. I think it's my aim was to qualify for Paris next year. And that was my aim for the season, and kind of what fit around that well. And we all know there aren't any short course races that are super competitive in the United States. And traveling for me, I don't love it. So if you tell me go over to Europe and do an Olympic distance WTS race, or stay in the United States and do a 70.3 or a 100K distance, I know what I'm picking. And so it's not really tough, but when the test event is in Paris, I'll be there. So that's kind of how I structured my season. And then I got to also have some fun, because I think there's a focus on qualifying for the Olympics. And then there's also another importance of doing well at the Olympics, and how do you get there? And I don't think there's one line or there's one way to do it. And I don't think just racing WTS races would cut it for me, but that's just me.
No, fair enough. I mean, where do you find the enjoyment? If it wasn't about the Olympics, if it wasn't about sort of qualifying for anything, and you could just choose a distance or a race series or a selection of races you could race, what would be the most enjoyable for you?
I think what I did, because I get to do like, well, and I think it might change as time goes on. I don't know, but I think getting to race the best people in the world, like that's what I want to do. And so also if it's like race a World Cup or race the Ironman World Championships, like the best people are at the Ironman World Championships. So regardless of the distance, I feel like you can learn a lot, both from like the race week and being around your fellow competitors and being a part of the race, and even post race. It's a great atmosphere.
Yeah, indeed. So like the victories you've had this year have been, like you say, middle distance, PTO US Open, and then Ironman 70.3 World Championships. What is it about that distance that suits you so well, do you think?
I don't know if it suits me. But like first of all, I enjoy it. Second, I think that the non-drafting element of the bike definitely helps me, as opposed to the Olympic distance. And so like, I think right now it's a very good blend based on that. I'm trying to focus on not really focus, that I'm dabbling in all of the distances. And so then like, it's like the tail ends kind of curve a lot because you get more specificity, but like, I don't know what exactly suits me the most, but I enjoy it. And it's also just a good atmosphere.
And the victory you had at the PTO US Open, you went into that race looking for that win. What was it like? What was it like racing that PTO race and taking that win?
Well, I wouldn't say I was like looking to win. I was looking to execute a good race. And because it was also like a key part of my buildup for Paris in terms of getting that stimulus. But Milwaukee, I'd raced in 2013, 2014, and 2015 at USA Triathlon Age Group Nationals. So it was very much a full circle moment of getting to race there again. And then also, you probably know, like, I was passed by Ashley Gentle with probably 3K to go last year at the PTO US Open in 2022. So I didn't want that to happen again. But so it was a mix of things. And I think because I had come second in 2022. It was for special winning in 2023.
Yeah. And what was the communication that was happening between you and, was it your dad on the sidelines during that race? It was,
Yes, there were a number of people out there who were very kind enough to give me splits, but my dad was excellent, and my manager was also there. Patrick was there, and so I had a number of people on the ground. And Trek had a number of people because they're Wisconsin based, and so they just came down to support the race. And I think that's huge for a bike company to care that much about triathlon.
Yeah, too right. And what's the approach when it comes to the bike? Because there's a lot of noise around your aero position not being quite as dialed in as some aero positions we see out there. Is that something you're working on, or something that you're not putting a lot of emphasis on at the moment because you're just, like you say, you're dabbling in various distances and you don't want to dial that in? Where are you with that sort of journey?
Well, I think we have to remember, I met you in person at the Collins Cup. That was a little over 2 years ago. And the conversation was, Taylor needs a TT bike. And you saw where the positions were of Lucy Charles and Daniela Reef and all those women at the Collins Cup. And so in January 2022, I got my first time trial bike. That was indeed. And so, and like, then like learning how to like both train on it, but race on it and dial that in. And just with also having had an injury that took 10 months to heal out of that time. I mean, I've had the bike for 22 months, and 10 months I was not severely injured, but just fairly injured. It's like, you know what, I just haven't had the time yet to put that focus. Fair enough. And so, and also when I'm traveling the amount I am for the short course racing and balancing the two schedules, like I haven't dedicated the time to go to a wind tunnel, because last year the off season that I should have had was spent having surgery. So yes, that will be priority. More so actually, because if I wanted to focus on the time trial for specific, the ITT, I'm going to need a CDA just for USA Cycling to even make discretionary selections. So that's something I need to do. But right now it's staying injury free.
Yeah, too right. I mean, do you think that some of the comments about your aero position and things like that are a bit unfair, being that you've had the season that you had, like you say, you're relatively new to the time trial bike, and it's all part of the journey and the learning experience as you get to sort of dialing in that kind of performance?
Well, I don't think they're unfair. I mean, I think they're honest. Now, I think there are multiple ways of going about them. If someone's posting them on social media to show their knowledge, that's one thing. If they reached out to me directly and said, here are some things that I'm seeing about your position, like from a place of care versus a place of, I know so much. There are multiple ways to go about it and present the same information. But I think it's also recognizing that like it is a progression, and it would be a risk to just go super, like I could do it overnight, but that might be risky. So I don't really want to take that risk. And I also don't have, like, I haven't had that time to invest yet, but that's.
Is that when you talk about risk like that, I suppose, I mean, if you go too dialed in on a time trial bike too early without having the time to get used to it and hone in that aero position and the supporting muscles you need to do that, then you might damage some of your performance over the short course, because you might start, pulling the wrong muscles and tendons in the wrong way. And then your run takes a bit of a hit, for example.
Well, yes. And the fact that I had within the past, year and maybe 2 or 3 months, I've had 2 serious return to run programs. And so you look at my body in April of this year, I was just returning to run. So I need to make sure I'm getting healthy and being healthy for a substantial amount of time with my running before I'm going to go try to damage that on any other sense. You just don't know how it's going to affect. And I want to stay healthy running first and foremost.
Nice. So your 5th place at the Paris test event, that locked you in for the Olympics. Yeah. How excited about the Paris Olympics are you?
Oh, I'm very excited. Were you at the test event?
I wasn't. No.
Well, so I think the course is 26% cobbles, 74% asphalt. They repaved the entire asphalt section. Really? So they can't repave the cobble section because it's very historic and you can't repay the
Yeah.
Champs-Elysees. But like, I think just that care and attention to detail, like it's going to be an incredible Olympics next summer. Hopefully, but it was very impressive. It was very exciting, and just like the attention to detail, I think, should be noted in terms of everything. And even it was 4 days of racing, and they would have everything cleared up and cleaned up like within like an hour. It was just and then the city opens up again, and it's like, wow, this is incredible.
They know how to do it. They know how to do it. The Champs-Elysees and the final stage of the Tour de France, for example, you can be in that environment with all that atmosphere and activity around you. You can go 2 streets away and it's like it's not happening. And then as soon as it's finished, it's all tidied away and it's like it never happened. It's amazing.
Yeah, well, even so, did you know, apparently, this might be a rumor, it was more expensive for them to close the Seine than the roads. So also to be able to swim in the Seine is kind of neat in some ways.
Yeah, it's very unique. What's it like to ride as a course?
Oh, I really liked it. I thought it has a lot of different components. It rode very fast. I think we got some like information beforehand that it was like at this wattage, the women will probably ride this speed. And based on the preview, I'm like, that sounds a little fast. But then we were like, I was pretty much right on the watt target. It was pretty much right on the time. So I'm like, wow, that's impressive. I think one thing that like, I think some people were a little beat up after the run because of the cobbles, but that's just going to be a factor next year. And with the grand final so much after the Olympics, like in 2021, it was like 3 or 4 weeks after, but this is like, there's a substantial gap. So it could be interesting in terms of anyone trying to do the double like Flora and Christian did. It might be tougher next year, but we'll see.
And what's the approach going to be next year? How are you going to start your year and build up to that Paris Olympics? Share all your secrets, mate. No one's listening.
Well, yeah, I don't know if they're secrets. Well, it's November 9th and a lot can change. I mean,
a lot can change, yeah.
You make a plan and it's probably going to change. It could change in a day. You just don't know. But as of today, the aim is that I'll open up my season in Abu Dhabi in March, on March 2nd. And then I'm hoping to race the Olympics on July 31st. And I'm not really sure what I'm going to be doing in between those two. It's just kind of getting to March, seeing how that goes, and then planning from there. But there are a lot of moving pieces because like the PTO hasn't announced their schedule, and there's just like so many different things. So I don't know if I'm going to do the time trial or not. I need to figure that out. And so
that's exciting as well. We'll get onto that. We will get onto that. That's very exciting.
Well, but I don't know, because I don't want to jeopardize the triathlon's my focus. And so I don't want to jeopardize that to participate in the time trial. I want to be competitive if I'm going to race the time trial. But so like sometimes you have to roll the dice and you won't know, but like I also want to be smart and strategic.
Race the time trial as well. It'll be amazing. What an experience.
No, I also like, first of all, I need to qualify, and the women are extremely deep. I mean, Chloe Daggert's the reigning world champion now. Thankfully, she's already qualified, but there are other very strong American women and otherwise in the sport of cycling. So we'll see about that. But the aim is July 31st, and that's about it.
Oh, God, it's going to be good, isn't it? Isn't it going to be good? So you mentioned the PTO series being part of your decision making for what you're going to do next year and what you're going to race and how you're going to race. Are you the sort of person who's going to stick with the way you've approached it now, which is dabbling in and out at different distances? Or are you going to try and super focus on that short course distance up until the Olympics and then go dabbling again? Are you going to stick with what you know, or are you going to roll the dice and sort of try and focus on the short course?
Well, I don't know. I think that in terms of, so the dabbling sounds like I'm distracted, but I think at the end of the day, like,
if it works, isn't it? You know?
Well, like my aim is to get to July 31st the best I can, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And the short course racing is tough. I mean, it's a lot of travel. It's a very heated, tense environment. I mean, next year, the US have announced their last qualification race is Yokohama. That will be it's a low stake race for me because I have my slot, but that will be very tense for all the American women, both who get on the start list and who don't. And just like that environment can be draining, and it's just a lot. So like in terms of, you can't spend what you don't save. So in terms of managing energy over the course of the year to be the best I can on July 31st. It'll be kind of trying to make the best decisions based on the information that I have and know.
Yeah. And like, this season has shown that you're not, you're capable of dipping in and out of various distances. You're a triathlete through and through. You're not someone who's just solely focused on one distance. So if you were to change things too dramatically, that might be to your detriment anyway, eh?
Well, you never know. I think that every season's different. I mean, I'm going to be starting the season as a different athlete than I was last year. So it's always different. And every experience builds on it. But like, I don't think that there's one path. So
No.
I might be wrong. Like, it might be July 31st may expose it all, but like, I'm going to try to make the best decisions, and my team's going to try to make the best decisions that we can based on what we know about me and what we know about the calendar and what we know about what we can control.
Love it. Talking about decisions, and something you mentioned a minute ago, riding the time trial. When did that come into your consciousness as an idea? Was it something that you came up with and thought, I want to go to this, I want to reach out to the people I can speak to? Or did someone come to you and say, we need you?
Oh, no, not at all. It was, so I worked with Neil Henderson for a few years, and he coached Evelyn Stevens to the UCI hour record. And he also coached Rohan Dennis to the UCI hour record. And so he was a very heavily like triathlon and cycling coach. And he was always interested in my like pure cycling. And he always dropped the idea of the hour record or me going into cycling. And so it was just like,
I can see it. I can see you whipping around that velodrome for an hour.
Oh, but I think the women's record has been broken above 50K. I think Victoria Busi just did that. Like, that's insane. That's well above what I can do. But anyway, so then when I had my injury in 2022, like I was just cycling and I was riding a lot. And it was one day and I was like, ooh, I wonder when time trial nationals are. I looked it up. It was the next day. And I was like, oh, but maybe next year. Like, that just like kind of excites me to see. And it was more just, I wanted to see where I might fall. And it didn't go fantastically. I'm not psyched with how the race was from a purely like individual output place, and let alone the results. So like, I know that there's room for improvement, but I also know that that is an area where a lot of people put a lot of effort and focus. And if it is a secondary pursuit, a secondary rail to triathlon, it's, I want to have the energy to do it well. And
to be able to rock up and do as you did without having joined all the dots. And because time trialing, professional cycling is my passion as a fan, and time trialing is within that my favorite discipline. I love it. And to rock up as you did and do as you did without having joined all the dots, without having spent hours in a wind tunnel, zeroing in a position, understanding how to apply that power over that distance on a time trial bike, there's a lot of improvements that can be made there from your perspective just by joining those dots together.
Well, even we were apparently like certain shoe covers. Like, I didn't have shoe covers going to the race. Like, apparently those can save 5 to 15 watts. Like, they're saving 15 watts. I'm putting them on for an Ironman now. That's huge. Like, that's insane. And especially, but as the speed gets higher, aerodynamics matter. And so, yes, it's like, it's such a cool sport. And also I think it's unique because, as you know, from a cycling fan, like, a lot of the people have to race 50 to 60 days a year. So for me to be able to do triathlon and to race, like, I think I raced 9 days last year, to be able to do a time trial or so, like, I feel like I might have an edge in terms of freshness. Now, I could be wrong. They have a lot more experience than me, but like, if you're racing 50 to, the men race up to like 75 or 80 days a year, that's insane.
Yeah. Do you find that an exciting road to go down, the idea of pursuing that?
It's I think a different realm, because it's just so heavily team focused. I don't know, like, I think I experienced it for the first time at the Lidl Trek Camp, and for sure, like, the team as an entity is something almost greater than any individual. And it's just different. I don't know, like I don't know where my triathlon career will go. You hope you have a healthy body, but you never know. And so if that was my only option for sport, I would definitely be interested. But I'm not sure at this point. I love triathlon.
Yeah, triathlon's good, isn't it?
Oh yes, and at this time, I mean, we haven't even talked. I haven't even talked about Super League, but like I've never done a Super League race yet, and that's fun. That seems fun too. Like I just haven't had the time in my schedule to do one because
Have they approached you, and have they talked to you and reached out to you and your representatives at all?
I think so.
Yeah,
Yes.
they must have done. They must have done. If I know Michael well enough, I'm sure he will have done. I'm sure the
Well, no.
opportunity is there for you in the future, but they are brutal. They are brutal.
Well, yes, and that's the fun thing in terms of like there's so many different avenues in which you can pursue triathlon in these days, and you might not ever overlap, which is unfortunate. Like there needs to be some race where everyone races, but
So where,
maybe that's
like, that's a good transition actually into the ecosystem of the sport at the moment, because we've got Super League Triathlon, we've got the PTO series, we've got the WTCS, we've got the Ironman has just released a new series, and then we've got the 70.3 Worlds, and then we've got Kona. What do you think about that sort of crowded approach? Do you think it's a plus for the sport at the moment to have so many new ventures happening at once?
I think it depends on the athlete because like I think there are a lot of shiny objects and you kind of have to decipher what's real and what's not and what's valuable to me and what's not. Like I think you look at someone like Miranda Carfrae, who I think managed her career so well. And I think she could do very well in like advising athletes. Like, okay, what's your goal? Focus on that. And then like you need to all to fit in because you don't want to go for everything and end up broke and not achieving everything. That's I think the danger because if there are too many things, you have to really focus in. But then the hard part is that if you choose one and achieve that, will you be satisfied with that, or will you question like, ooh, I could have done more? And so then that's probably healthier for the sport because you just have to be really okay with you and what you're doing, and it's not any external measure because it might be impossible at this point to hit all the external measures. You have to be very intrinsically motivated and okay with yourself.
Absolutely. I mean, I suppose it also gives, like you say, the shiny objects are there and what's real and what is going to last and what isn't going to last, because the PTO series has got its own distance and some people are going to be very specialized at racing that. Then you've got this Ironman series that has come along where you've got 3 full Ironman races that count and then a collection of 70.3 races that will count. That for those people that aren't specialists at the PTO distance, that might suit people who are better at that full distance racing. You know, they really are those full distance specialists. But is the PTO going to last? Is it going to be around in 5 years? Is the Ironman series going to be around in 5 years? Who knows? And so you might put all your energy into something and not have that full roadmap ahead of you.
Well, yeah, I think that's the tough thing. Like you say, will the PTO last? I think that's a big question everyone has. And then if the PTO goes away, what's the incentive for Ironman keeping their series? Like that series will just probably go away. Like, okay, we don't need this anymore. But I think the tough thing about the Ironman series, if I'm like looking at it correctly, is a lot of people who might do 3 Ironmans in a year, they tend to do one in the spring, one world championship, and then a race after, like Florida or Cozumel, something like that. But I didn't see any fall Ironmans. You have to get your 2 good Ironmans or even 3 before like July 30th or August. And that's heading into the championship race. So it's like, then can you perform well in Kona or Nice? And so it's like, are you going for the series? Are you going for the world championship? Like, it'll probably be very different athletes. And then everyone likes to talk about like, who's the greatest triathlete or who's the best of the triathletes this year. And that'll be tough to answer because it'll just be like so many different ones for different reasons.
It will. And I think from a broadcast perspective, it doesn't give the fans of the sport that real clarity as to what they're watching and who they're watching doing what. Do you know what I mean? Formula One, for example, is the pinnacle of a sport, and that's it. It may not be the most exciting at the moment. It may be a little bit repetitive and boring, but it is what it is. You see the best 22 drivers in the world competing against each other week in, week out. Triathlon isn't providing that at the moment.
No, not at all. And you have someone like Lucy Charles and Beth Potter didn't even cross paths once this year, I don't think. And like, and same with like Ashley Gentle didn't race Beth Potter either. Like, who's the better triathlete. Like they're both great and you can't really compare. And then that's tough because so that's actually a good point in terms of how can there be like one unifying force in the sport?
Because that's what we need, isn't it? In reality, at the moment, triathlon is a very participation-based sport. All of the income to the sport comes through a participation model. And what the PTO are trying to do is create a fan base who may or may not participate, but they buy into that sport and they watch it when it's on TV, so that then they get big sponsors to come in and pay for adverts and pay for sponsorship. And that provides a funding model for the sport that isn't based on participation. It means you can move away from that having to constantly service the participation model. I really want to see that succeed. And I wonder, do you think that, as a fan of the sport, as well as one of the top athletes in the sport at the moment, do you think that the PTO or any series could ever really capture that broadcast and make it exciting enough to get an audience to watch it live and really buy into the sort of thing they're trying to do?
Well, so that's a very good question. I think that's one component, but then the other component so there are a few gyms that have closed in Boulder recently. And apparently in the gym industry, at least in the United States, they rely on accounting for a certain percentage of members not showing up. That doesn't really happen in Boulder. But similarly, at the Trek camp, SRAM took us to a Bulls game, basketball game. And you look at the people, even in the audience, and we were in a box, I'm guessing that 50 or 60% of the people in that box have no idea who won. They were just at the game, enjoying the desserts, enjoying the atmosphere, enjoying the crowd.
Bit of corporate hospitality.
Yes. So then it's like, okay, yes, the sport needs the fan base, but then they need the fake fans who are in attendance and driving up the numbers. Like, how many people watch the Super Bowl in the United States? But how many watch it for the advertisements and the food and the parties and not the game itself?
That is true. That is true. I'd have no idea what the Super Bowl is, but I know exactly what film trailers are coming out around it. That's the kind of geek I am.
Well, yeah. So then it's okay, yes, on one side, how do you get the fans of the sport? But then how do you get more people to be interested in what surrounds the sport to also drive that base? Because I feel like that's
did you just slap me on camera?
So I hit my glass, but so I also wonder if it's it might not be achievable if you're just looking for one metric. You might have to get multiple metrics of people that you're not even looking for.
Same question then. Do you think it's possible that this sport that we love, this long course sort of, PTO distance to full Ironman, do you think it's possible for this sport that we love as it is to capture that?
As it is, I'm not sure. But I think that there will have to be some different model. I think there's the potential, but you look at a lot of people, it's like 18-year-old talent scouting. You don't know who's going to make it or break it. And so I'm hopeful. I'm a huge fan of the sport. I know from personally, me racing has inspired some of my family members to get into running and riding the Peloton and stuff like that. And so you just don't know how the trickle down effects, but I'm hopeful, but I'm not positive. So
fair enough. So let's talk about Kona. You went to Kona and you raced Kona, and there was so much noise around you racing Kona. It seems that whenever you turn up on a start line at the moment, people are convinced you're going to win the race, or you're there to be a change maker and to really make a difference. What was the experience of firstly going to Kona and then racing it?
Well, so did you go to Kona this year, or have you been?
I did not this year. No, I wasn't there. But a lot of people I know were there, and so I had lots of text and messages happening while it was taking place.
Well, so I think I had been in 2010 with my mom. I was 12 years old, so I didn't I was I knew the sport a little bit because she was such a fan, but I didn't really know the sport. And so it's a very special place, I think, in terms of just the race week and just all the people there and the excitement and the energy surrounding the race is very special. I loved the experience. It was the best I could have done on the day. And I was intrigued by how many people were very staunch on their opinions of how they thought I would race, either in a range, a spectrum. I mean, one person had to have been right based on the range of what I was hearing. So, and then there was a lot that I wasn't even allowing myself to hear. So it was a lot, but it was a great experience, and I was grateful to be a part of it.
So, like you say, there was some staunch opinions. Some people were like, Taylor's going to win this, no matter what, absolutely crush it. Now, were you going there for the experience because you've had a busy year, you've had some good results, but you've got Paris as a real focus next year? Were you going there for the experience, or in the back of your head, were you thinking, I'm on my day, I might take this?
Well, I think you can't expect that. I was going there for the experience for a number of reasons. But number one, it's hard for a rookie to win. Like, I know Chelsea and Gustav defied that. So did Christy Wellington, but it's only a handful. Like, you look at Chris McCormack, it took him a number of shots and he won it in style, but it took him a number of tries. And it's not any more or less respectable to do it on your first versus your fifth or whatever. Like, winning Kona is huge. So just, I don't know what the future of Ironman holds. I don't know if 2025 will be the last time the women race in Kona. I was saying that race week, and a lot of people at Ironman were very disappointed in me saying that because they seem to be confident that it would stay on the island. But like, from my perspective, I can't be sure. Like, There should have been, like, in the contract, there were supposed to be 2 days of racing in Kona this year. The men shouldn't have been in Nice, but the island revoked that right. And as they were right, like, they were allowed to. And so you just don't know. So if 2025 is the last year in Kona, I want to be there and I want to be competitive. And so I felt that this year was very important for that. But then secondly, the Olympics have a lot of noise, and I didn't handle that well in 2021. And probably the only other triathlon that can prepare me for that is Kona. And
that's a good, I like that. That's a good stance.
And so, like, learning how to deal with the noise, and I learned how to say no to a lot of people. And because, like, in terms of media requests, my manager and I set out like who we would say yes to, and it was purposeful. And then everyone else I said no. And it was interesting because one person had emailed my manager and one person and then she emailed me directly. And I said, like, no, sorry. And so it was like, but I hadn't known that, like, there was even more communication going on behind the scenes. And it was really important. It confirmed that having a good media plan going into the race was helpful in relieving stress. And also just the noise and learning how to perform with that. Like, at the end of the day, it's me executing my best race possible. And regardless of how much noise there is, you have to be able to perform. And that's important. So I think it was a step forward from Tokyo. Was it perfect? No, but also, like, Lucy, Anne, and Laura had phenomenal days, and you just also have to be very inspired and congratulatory towards them.
What was your day like? We know what your day like in terms of numbers, and fourth place is amazing. But from your perspective, inside your head, in that race, what did it feel like racing that day, forgetting all the noise, all the prep, all the build up, all the media? What was the race like for you?
Well, so I had to go in with a bit of a different plan than I normally have for racing, because I had a very, very healthy amount of respect and fear for the race and the distance. Like, the talk on my team was like, Taylor, you need to be able to get to the finish line. And so I had very high caps and I wasn't allowed to go. Like, I like to race. I like to be instinctual. I like to, like, kind of play off, like, have my numbers, but also, like, if I need to make a move, I need to make a move. And there are just some things you have to do within the race. I wasn't really allowed to do that, or we had agreed that I wasn't allowed to do that. And I agreed with that plan, knowing the prep I had. So I enjoyed my day. I mean, it flew by. It was very fun. It kind of hit me very much mentally, physically, and emotionally, probably like 34 to 36K on the run. And it just, like, the whole year kind of slammed in my face. And that was what it was. And I was just like, the last 3K, I was like, I had asked someone, like, how much do I have to Daniela? And it was 6 minutes. And so I did the math, like, assuming she's running like 4 minutes per K, let's say, and I have to be running 6 minutes per K to hold her off. Like, that was daunting in the moment. And just, like, to get into that, but that's the fun part in terms of, like, how to handle that position, because you can't simulate that. Like, it's like when you're in the heat of the moment and you have to make those decisions and your body's falling apart, like, that's what I love. And I'm only really allowed to do that in races. So, like, I enjoyed it all. Maybe too much, but I enjoyed it all.
And then you went straight from there to the little trek camp.
Yes.
And were you doing any sort of, what were you doing at the little trek camp would probably be a better question.
It was more just like meeting sponsors and seeing new gear.
Okay, so they didn't put you on a bike and were like, right, show us your numbers on your broken legs.
Oh, no, not at all. But I was getting there's a very big running culture in the cycling community.
Yeah.
And so, and I couldn't run. I was the triathlete who couldn't run when all these other people like are going out for their 21K runs. And I'm like, wow, like this is impressive. Like I can't walk up the stairs. So it was very nice. And it was a good distraction. Like I think it was like a very different event from Kona, and so it was nice.
Cool. So we talked about the state of the sport in terms of the amount of entities coming on at the moment. I mean, it's good. We're seeing a resurgence in triathlon. We're seeing investment in triathlon, people putting energy into the sport, and it's amazing to see. What do you think about the state of the sport at the moment as an athlete? We've had a few negative stories in the last few months, a few rumblings and a few things that have happened that have sort of tainted the sport slightly. What's your take on some of that?
Can you give me examples?
Oh, like Colin Chartier, for example, and some of the social media stuff that's come out recently around the men's race in Nice and the winner of that. I'm not asking for any specifics at all. I just want to know what you think about the state of the sport and the health of the sport at the moment.
I'm probably a bit too like guarded. I mean, like, or not guarded is the right term. I'm very naive.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I love the sport and I think its growth is great right now. I mean, it seems like it's a very positive time to be an athlete, but with that, there are probably going to be things that are unanticipated. I mean, if you talk to anyone who may have had like success, like, or you achieve a goal, it's kind of like there are some challenges that come along with that, but that's life. And it's just like they might be better problems than if it was like, oh, races are all being taken away. I mean, let's go back to 2020 and we were excited when there was one race.
Yeah.
So like, I think there will always be issues, but I hope the sport's in a good place, but that's easy for me to say.
And do you think this choice that we've got at the moment going forward as to where people race is going to breed do you think we're going to see athletes channeling into their specific lanes, or do you think it's going to breed a type of athlete who can tread across the options that we're going to have on the table?
Well, I'm not sure. I think it could probably breed both and both at the same time. But what do you think?
Ooh, I don't know. I think in the short term, you'll see people making very strategic decisions. I think you'll see people who perhaps don't see themselves, maybe neopros who don't see themselves having an amazing Kona or an amazing 70.3 worlds, focusing on that Ironman Championship series to try and cut their teeth. And I think you'll see people maybe who aren't particularly successful at the PTO distance, focusing on that Ironman series. Then you'll see the PTO series really take off for a minute, I think, with those athletes that really do well there. So I think in the short term, we'll see a bit of a channeling, but I hope in the longer term, we start to see a sort of a hybrid triathlete, much like yourself, really, who is able to dip into different distances. Cause that's what I love about the sport. I love the person who can throw that hat into any ring and do okay. Do you know what I mean? And isn't just hyper focused on one area of the sport.
Well, and hopefully like that's a really good point, because I was almost thinking hopefully there might be a little bit more liberation with the athletes, like in terms of, okay, if you're making your living well, racing a few PTO races each year, you could race the short course races without being owned by your federation.
Yeah.
And then when athletes are empowered and in a healthier environment, they might perform a lot better. Now it might not be the case, but if you have autonomy and control and you're able to make the decisions you want to make for yourself, and then you get to race for the right reasons versus having to, it might set the stage for even better racing, but you don't know until it happens.
No, you don't. And do you think that with the professionalization of the long course like that and a bit more money coming into it, do you reckon we might see the allure and the power of the Olympics diminishing slightly and therefore the power of the federations to own and control those athletes a little bit wane, because they've set their stalls on saying, well, the Olympics is always our sun and we rotate around it, so therefore we hold all the cards. Do you think we'll see that sort of change slightly?
Well, I don't know, because it's kind of like how many short course races a year do you need to just maintain your ranking and being able to get into them? Because then the maintenance mode is very different from trying to pursue it fully. And then if someone like maintains for the quad and then just races the Olympics and peaks for that, that's very different. I don't know if the federations will hammer down and almost become more professional because of it, or like, I kind of hope they add the PTO distance to the Olympics. Like that would be,
it would be cool,
like,
wouldn't it?
that would be the best. And I know there are arguments that there can't be a race longer than the marathon, but isn't the road race for cycling longer than the marathon?
Yeah, I mean, in reality, I would, what are rules? What are rules other than decisions made at a certain level? Make a different decision. That's all you need to do.
Yeah.
You know?
But then if you had like the PTO, like if that distance was in the Olympics, it would be very interesting kind of what decisions athletes make, because then you could race the PTO series and race the Olympics, hopefully, just that same distance.
Exactly.
And then go up or down depending on maybe even the year or the focus. Like you look at someone like Jason West, and I think that he's almost defying the odds, and he like went up, gained control of his career more so. And then now he's potentially going to be racing short course because he can, and not because he has to, but because it's his choice. And then like you're coming from it from a different perspective of like, you know what, this is because I want to do it, not because I have to do it to put food on my table.
Exactly. Love it. That's a great point. So next year you're gonna bounce into next year. The Olympics is gonna happen. Kona is gonna happen. Are we gonna see an Olympics Kona double from you?
Well, definitely not, because the women are racing in Nice.
Oh yes, I'm so conditioned. It's like calling a vacuum cleaner a Hoover. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I don't. I'm sorry, because I'm from the United States, so I don't
No,
know.
you don't know what I mean, do you? No, okay.
But it's like calling a hot tub a jacuzzi, or
Yeah,
like
there you go. There you
like
go.
that.
Exactly that. It's yeah. Do we think we'll see an Ironman World Championship and an Olympic double from you?
I don't know. I know that Nice and Kona are 53 days apart. I know that Nice requires a lot of technical, like specific work because of the descending. That looks very different, and that's
But
like
that's your
different.
wheelhouse, mate, isn't it? Isn't that bike course your wheelhouse? You know, if
Well, I don't
if someone
know.
said to me which course is going to suit Taylor most, I'd be like Nice, mate. Absolute smash fest.
Well, I also think in terms of like a bell curve, like it, like, you know, like when a class is graded, I guess, on a curve versus like absolute grades, like compared to the other women, like Daniela, that's her wheelhouse, I think.
Yeah.
So, like it's also who are you racing against and what's the level and where do you have to be? But also Ironman's added their validation again. So I don't know if I'll be able to fit in the requirements to be able to race. And then if I can't fit in the requirements given, because I think I have to do that by June 30th, I would have to race a full Ironman or 270.3s. And that's going to be harder to do before July 31st. I was very fortunate this year that I didn't have to do that, but Ironman, with the pressure of the PTO, has added that validation again. So I'm not sure, but it's all to be determined.
You mentioned Daniela. Are you working on the assumption that she'll be racing Nice, and her declaration that this was her last Kona is simply her last Kona and she'll be at Nice?
Well, I hope she's racing Nice, but I guess you never know with any athlete. I think the impressive thing about Kona this year was that like there were 7, I guess like they called it like 7 big names, and everyone showed up to the race like healthy and ready to race, and that was kind of impressive. But it is sport, and you looked at St. George in 2022, the Ironman World Championships, and like I felt like they were dropping like flies.
Oh.
So
I was there
know.
on the ground, and it was a depressing final few days leading into that race, you know.
Oh, yeah. But I'm hopeful. I mean, in terms of just like seeing her performance in Roth this year and over the years, like she is one of the best to have ever done this sport, especially at that distance. And to see her do it in Nice, I also wonder if that would allow for like more of her family and friends to be able to go versus Kona. So I don't know. And I don't know if that's important to her, but like, it would just be cool.
How much does the Nice course excite you compared to Kona?
I don't know a ton about the Nice course because, to be perfectly honest, so I was
You
in the
didn't
United
watch it, didn't you? You didn't watch it.
Not a lot of it, no. I went to bed and then I didn't really get myself to watch it again. So no, I haven't really watched much of it. I know the shape of the swim. I know there's a lot of climbing on the bike. I know the descent is very technical, but no, I didn't watch it. So
No,
but
the bike doesn't let up. You know, there's this sort of perception that it's a climb, a plateau, and then a descent. But that plateau is technical and has its undulations in it. The road surface isn't great, so it's a constant technical battle, really. You know, there isn't really any point where you can, other than the climb probably, where you could just sit and consistently put out power. Because a climb is very similar to a time trial, isn't it? Essentially.
Well, yeah, except for the fact that looking at Sam Laidlow's time, it was probably 10% slower than he went in Kona. So if you had 10% to my Kona bike split, that's a lot. That's in the realm that's not really my strength right now. And if I have 53 days in between Paris and Nice, it's not necessarily enough time to build up that muscular endurance, especially with a marathon coming after. But I don't know. So we'll see. It's kind of, and if it works out, great. If it doesn't, I hope it's still a great race.
You sound like the kind of person who's going to have fun finding out anyway.
Well, yeah, I think that's part of the fun. It's like, unfortunately, sometimes I think when it's your job, you kind of lose that sight. But I try to keep it in, and I'm really like, I would prefer to have something like Kona. Like, in a way, I felt like I fell flat on my face. Like, and there's a failure exposed. Like, I was walking on the Queen K, and versus not even lining up. Like, that's a little bit more painful because you just never know unless you line up. And then also in terms of learning, like, I didn't win my first WTS race. I didn't win my first 70.3 worlds. Like, in order to get to the results that you want to get, sometimes you have to have some very humbling learning experiences. So it's all valuable. And if racing Nice helped me in Kona 2025, then I will be on the start line if I can.
Love it. I love that play. I love that attitude, and I think that's a brilliant place to leave the interview. If people want to find you, where can they look online to come and check you out on social media?
Oh goodness, I have Instagram. I'm not super great.
I know. Yeah, it's not your favorite thing, but you know, we all do it.
I have someone helping me manage my account now, and he's doing a very good job of posting and helping me with that to ensure that I actually have a little bit of a presence.
No, it's all you. It's all you, mate. You gotta say it's all you.
No, but I need the help because it's a growth area for me.
Yeah.
And then I've had 5 YouTube videos this year. My 5th YouTube was posted on November 8th. So it was an experiment in terms of, like, I kind of like to learn, do I want to waste any energy? If people ask me about certain things, like, are you going to start a YouTube channel? I'm like, okay, I'll do a trial year, see how it goes. And then at the end of the year, it can be like, you know what, that went well. Or at the end of the year, it's like, you know what, I'm not going to waste my energy on that. I know that because it's hard to say no unless you've tried. So
I am always excited to find out what you're going to do next, because you're always coming up with something. I wouldn't be surprised if in a couple of months I found out you'd entered an ultra marathon next year as well, just to see what that was like. Do you know what I mean? That's the kind of thing I expect from you. Just what's she going to race next?
Oh, I don't think so. Hopefully it's a little bit more tame from now on and just like reasonable, rational, but it's always a fun process.
I appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much for saying yes to come and having a chat with me. You are responsible for one of my favorite moments in triathlon personally, which is when I was at the Collins Cup in 2021. And I was stood next to Tim Hemming as you exited the water. And I said, she's going to win this one, mate. And he said, nah, not a chance. And I said, hear me now, quote me later. And you absolutely showed up and you proved me right. And I love you for that. So thank you so much.
Well, I didn't even know that. I guess I heard it subconsciously. But
It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure. Look after yourself, eh?
Well, thank you so much for having me on, and good luck with the rest of your year.
You're always welcome.
Mate, one of your best. Absolutely one of your best.
Yeah,
What can I say?
it was good fun. It was good fun and engaging. And what I like about interviewing athletes like Taylor is that you don't get stock answers. You get a considered, enthusiastic response. And also what I said in the interview that I enjoy about her so much is I'm always excited as to what she's going to do next. Because she's not somebody who's on a set course and you can't really predict it. Like the fact that at the moment she's toying with doing the Olympic time trial on the bike alongside the triathlon, the fact that next year the Olympics are going to be her focus. She's going to do the season opener in Abu Dhabi. She's going to do the Olympics, but she may do some other different events, different distances in between then and that race. And I love that, because for me, triathlon is about these rounded athletes dipping in and out of races and distances and being the best at what they do. And I've got a lot of time for that.
The thing I've really liked about Taylor this year in particular is that we've spoken a lot around how we see a lot of men tend to sort of flip between distances. For the last, I guess, 4 or 5 years, or as long as we've been doing this podcast, Christian, Gustav sort of amplified it, but it's not new. Like we've seen it a lot compared to the women. And I think we've asked guests in the past, why don't we see the women do it that much? Whereas Taylor's like, she's doing it, man. She to me is, and not purely from a performance point of view, although I think they're comparable. She's like the female Christian Blumenfeld. Christian Blumenfeld's the male Taylor Knibb, in the sense that they both like, yeah, this is the pathway. And like, fuck that. I'm doing it my way. I want to try this. I want to try this. I want to try this. And it's exciting, mate. You're exactly right. Like not knowing what she's doing, like hearing she wants to do the Olympic time trial's awesome. And, having a lineup for Kona this year was awesome. And stuff like that, it does add a level of excitement. We need these sort of athletes who do go, I don't give a shit about what the rules say, or I don't care about what the old school approach to it should be. Like, no, I'm doing it my way. It's really good. It's really refreshing. So,
yeah. And the fact that, when she's lining up for Kona and all these voices are saying, well, she's going to do this well, she's going to win it, she shouldn't even be there, she's not going to have the best race, and what it was like to get her opinion on hearing that, and she says herself in that interview that it was quite surreal with the force of opinion that some people have as to how she was going to go at that race. Whereas in reality, she was going there for the experience. She was going there to find out what it was like. Because she said, as you'll hear in the interview, which I know you haven't listened to yet,
yep.
Her first experience at the Olympics in 2021, she said she didn't deal with the noise around that very well. She didn't really deal with the energy of an Olympics and everything that comes with. And she thought, going into Paris, the closest she could get to that, to try and understand and get better at dealing with that noise, was going to Kona, experiencing the noise around Kona and understanding and sort of refining how best to deal with that, so that when she goes to Paris in next year, she's got a better understanding of how to be a better performer around those sort of conditions.
That's fucking cool, man. That's so cool to hear, isn't it? Like, I don't know what I'll do. I'm going to put myself in a position with heaps of pressure where heaps of people are talking about me, just to see if I can like deal with it better. Fuck.
Yeah, I would learn to learn how to deal with
Yeah.
it better, because and that's what happened, wasn't it? She didn't say that before she went in. She allowed that pressure cooker to stew. She allowed those voices to say, well, no, she's going to do this, she's going to do that. And then she went and had the race that she had, and she enjoyed it, and she suffered. She said she was walking on the Queen K, and she knew the distance down back to Daniela, and she knew that she had to run 6-minute Ks for that last bit of the race to be able to keep Daniela behind her, assuming Daniela was running a certain speed. And she said the idea of running 6-minute Ks at that point was daunting to her, because she felt the way she did.
Oh man, yeah, again, it's so cool. Yeah, no, very, very good. Like I said, I very rarely listen to episodes of this podcast because I think I sound like a dickhead, but I'll definitely be checking this one out, because Taylor Knibb is an athlete that I'm fascinated by. Like I said, she's a bit of an enigma to me, I think. But yeah, I mean, what are you thinking? We're a while out, but what do you reckon for her chances for Paris? Where do you see her? How do you see that race going for somebody like Taylor Knibb?
I don't know, and that's cool. I like not knowing, because she said herself, I mean, this year has been a bit destabilized, with having the injury and the surgery and the recovery. And then she's had some really good races, but they've all been at the sort of PTO middle distance, and then 4th place in Kona. So all of her success in the last period has been at the slightly middle distance and above. She hasn't had a huge amount of success at the short course, other than coming fifth in the Paris test event, getting herself the qualification that she needed. Qualifying for the Olympics has been a success, but she hasn't got that fallback of having won races in the recent history. And so I don't know, because these were questions I was trying to ask her during the interview. Is being who you are you gonna stay who you are leading up to these Olympics and dip in and out of distant distances, knowing that you've been successful at this point? Or are you going to try and really laser focus on the Olympic distance to laser focus on Paris? And I don't know the answer, and I don't think she does, as to whether she would be better staying as she is and getting the best out of herself as she is now. Or if she laser focused in, is that going to destabilize? Because that's not who she is. She doesn't race like that. She is the Blumenfeld of that world.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that she's
And
going to? Do you think we're going to see her influence more females to do that? One of the things we, sort of success breeds success, or people want to replicate what people who are successful do. Do you see her suddenly going, "Fucking hell, Taylor's doing this. Look at Taylor. She's doing this, and she's having quite a lot of success." I mean, you look back to a few weeks ago when I interviewed Max and Kate, and one of the things they were sort of saying is, being short course is pretty grim at the moment, and sitting on the outside looking at what the PTO and Ironman and everything's happening at the moment, it's pretty hard not want to get a slice of it. Do you think that maybe an athlete like Taylor, let's go hypothetical. I like a hypothetical that she does sort of dip in and out this year. She does commit to the PTO series as well as the Olympics, gets the Olympics. Let's say she medals. Do you think then a lot of other athletes go, fuck, I know, okay, well, maybe you don't just have to do the one thing. We'll see a lot more of those female superstars do this.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, we talked about this. We talked about where we were going to see what the implications of this sudden busyness of the season is going to be with Super League, the PTO, Ironman 70.3 Worlds, Ironman Kona Worlds, the Ironman series, or the WTCS, all coming at the same time. And ultimately, she threw that back at me and asked what I thought was going to happen. And I said, in the short term, I think you'll see some channeling. But ultimately, I want to see athletes evolve that can straddle the stratosphere, as it were. And she agreed with that. And that's what she wants to see as well. And then we talked about the Olympics and the power of the Olympics and whether it'll retain that power. And ultimately, her vision for the future and what she'd like to see is the PTO distance be the Olympic event.
I don't think I like the idea, but I can't see that happening.
Yeah, I love the idea, and I don't think it'll happen. But there will be a reaction because the WTCS, the federations, the Olympics are convinced that the Olympic event will stay as the pinnacle of the sport. I'm not, you're not. And if the way we see the world transpires and the Olympics does falter as the pinnacle of the sport because there's so much more money to be made elsewhere in the rest of the ecosystem, if the rest of the ecosystem has been successful, then there will have to be a reaction from the powers that be to try and turn that ship around. And what's that reaction going to be? Rules are only rules, and they're there. They are made by people in positions of power. Ultimately, saying, "Well, the rules don't allow it." Well, change the fucking rules, mate.
It's funny you say that because it's a good little segue. Something I had actually meant to mention and I'd forgotten because it's fucking early as fuck here. Did you see the announcement this week where the PTA came out saying that the Ibiza race was going to be a European Championships, and World Triathlon's come and be like, No. We didn't agree to this. We only agreed to a world title for a World Triathlon world title. We never agreed to a European title. Did you see? I saw this and just thought, fucking, here we go again, right? World Triathlon.
Yeah, here we go.
The first example of World Triathlon getting involved. I think I put up a tweet and I was like, World Triathlon making the sport more complicated than it needs to be since 1989. I mean, I don't want to keep having this rant, but like I'm increasingly becoming an old man who's just got a bone to pick with World Triathlon because I think that I just don't see value at the moment, mate. Like I just see them. It's like, what are they like? It's like I've seen the light, and I just realized that they're problematic, mate. Like this obsession they have with the Olympics and the way they hold it over people, I think is so problematic, and it's actually really holding the sport back. And man, Jesus, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's not great, but we'll see. It's going to be whatever happens, it's going to be a really interesting few years for triathlon, as whether the PTO continues to thrive and survive. Like Taylor said in the interview, if the PTO do falter and they do not get where they're going and they disappear, she reckons Ironman will pull their series almost immediately because they'll be like, well, there's no need for this anymore.
I wouldn't be
And then
surprised
suddenly
either.
this crowded ecosystem isn't so crowded anymore.
Well, that's been
Um,
my fear the whole time, right? I've said this a long time, where I've said that if the PTO does vanish, they're going to leave this huge empty hole because I mean, there you go. We've said it doesn't really matter. There's proof in the pudding. So,
yeah. And then
yeah,
they're empowered even more to say, well, we're the ones still standing. We hold the cards. We won't even go down this road if it happens again. We'll just stand our ground.
mm,
While you were asleep, Christian Blumenfeld has confirmed that he will be racing Kona and
so
Paris next year. So that's we were talking about him a minute ago, and Taylor being the equivalent of him on the other side. So he's going to be doing that. So 12 weeks between
yeah, I
the
did see
Olympic
this
Games
article.
and Kona. So it's
Never in doubt, mate. I always thought it would be
no,
interesting.
it was never in doubt. It was never in doubt.
You know, he has to ratify though. That's the thing I picked up that was fascinating is that now he has to ratify. So he has to either do two
Yeah.
70.3 races or an Ironman.
So does Taylor, and we discussed this in the video. So does she. She's very keen to race Nice. She wants to be there, but she's got to get that ratification done. 270.3s or an Ironman at some point. With the Paris Olympics there as well, where's she going to find the time to do that? So these are questions that are outstanding for athletes like that.
Go do it now. Just go do a couple of 70.3s in your like as part of your build or something. And
Yeah, I mean, what Sky raced Kona and then we raced Florida.
fucking mate, I'm going to talk a lot about Sky next week because Christ Almighty, what a performance, eh?
Yeah, cool as fuck, eh?
What a performance that was. Fastest American woman ever. Smashed the course record by like what 18 minutes or something. Like, I've made that number up. I have no idea if that's actually she beat the course record.
Indeed. Tim Hemming put a tweet up about an hour ago on Twitter. I can't bring myself to call it X. And he just said, "Don't think Sky Munch is one of the best triathletes in the world? Question mark. It's time to wake up and smell the lavender." And he's right. And I responded to that, said I was just talking about you on the podcast, and he said the lawyers will be in touch.
And was this a bit of like future inception because you knew we'd reference it when we spoke now? So
No, I actually did mention him during the interview.
Mate, you're getting a few. Timmy Hemming's getting a few mentions this week.
I try and mention Tim as often as possible. I know he listens, and you know, there's royalties involved.
Exactly. Who doesn't listen, mate, at this point?
Yeah.
But Jimbo, I think we're doing pretty well this week. I know it's a long interview. I know it's late for you and early for me. I want to go get that breakfast buffet sorted. If people want to find out more about Talking Triathlon, where do they need to go?
If you want to support the show, you can jump onto Patreon at patreon.com/talking triathlon. If you want to follow Tim, is at tford14 on Instagram, and I'm bale.james85 on Instagram. Find us across all social networks at Talking Triathlon on Instagram and at Talk Triathlon on Twitter. If you join the Patreon group, you get access to the growing, burgeoning community. You get access to the WhatsApp group. We're always in there chatting, talking about triathlon, as we always do.
In the name.
Often in a much more relaxed way than we are now, and we're pretty relaxed on here.
It's true. Well, Jimbo, I appreciate it. Again, really well done this week getting Taylor Knibb on the show. God knows what's happening next week. Next week's camp week, so it's chaos. But we'll sort that out next week, guys. Thank you for listening, and we'll be back next week.
Cheerio.